now know that we can either reverse or slow down the aging process.
Aging is going to be a crisis. By the year 2030, I think it is, there'll be 55 million of us over the age of 70.
What we'd really like to do is to extend the health span of individuals while they're alive. If we can maintain health, that's an important goal.
Estrogen helps regulate the amounts of supplies of the neurotransmitter acetylcholine we have. Acetylcholine regulates memory. It's basically ink for memory. And so estrogen regulates this enzyme called choline acetyltransferase, and that regulates our amount of acetylcholine. Estrogen regulates the amount of glucose we have going to our brain. The major fuel in the brain is glucose. It can't survive without it. Guess what? It also can't store it. There are no reserve pockets. Estrogen gets its glucose from the body's supplies either in the liver or in the muscles. And the only way that it can get it is through something called GLUT1 transporters that can cross the blood-brain barrier. The brain supplies of glucose depend on estrogen bringing glucose, glycogen, from the body to the brain. And if there's no estrogen, then basically there's diminished supplies of glucose to the brain. Estrogen increases the oxygen supplies to the brain. Ginkgo biloba sort of does that too. Well, estrogen is wonderful at doing this. Estrogen spares nerve cells from lots of kinds of damage. Alzheimer's, you may know, involves beta amyloid proteins that gum up the works and that kill neurons. Guess what estrogen does? It protects cells from dying from beta amyloid poisoning. It basically cuts up the beta amyloid precursor protein and prevents the brain cells from dying from it. Estrogen prevents cells from dying from glutamate. When someone has a stroke or someone has brain injury, a lot of glutamate is released and it kills off brain cells. If you put brain cells together with glutamate and you include estrogen in there, the cells survive much longer. People who are taking estrogen, and I'm not advocating that they do this, who have strokes recover much better. They have less injury.
The gold standard for measuring hormones for a woman is a blood test. And that's what doctors will recommend a woman get. Let's get a blood test and let's see what your hormones are. Unfortunately, the problem with blood tests is that they only measure 1 to 9% of the biologically active hormones in a woman's body. So what's really there in her tissues don't show up through blood tests. And what is being used now as a much more accurate assessment is a saliva test, saliva assay test, which can be ordered by a doctor, or there are some places where women can get them direct. And these tests actually show much more accurately what hormone levels are existing in a woman's body and her tissue levels.
People who shouldn't have taken estrogen in the past shouldn't take it now, but there are more plus factors that have been added to the equation. So we know that estrogen helps prevent osteoporosis. We know that it helps prevent heart disease. We now know that it helps reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease. We also know in my syndrome that basically it helps prevent verbal changes, changes in memory, changes in learning. And so it's become more complicated. So if you're afraid of breast cancer, if there's a lot of breast cancer in your family, stay away. If there's a lot of endometrial cancer in your family, stay away. If you have a lot of blood clots in your family, you shouldn't take estrogen.
So we're just told estrogen is, the thing women need. And progesterone is never talked about at all, but progesterone is a class of hormone and a hormone in its own right that is a precursor, which means it also is metabolized into testosterone and estrogen and corticosteroid hormones. It's a very important hormone, and it has and turns into these other important hormones. So we must have adequate levels of progesterone, which has been shown to strengthen the immune system. Women with high progesterone levels have less incidence of cancer. Progesterone helps to turn that fat that estrogen makes in the body into energy. So women, when they start increasing their natural progesterone levels, can start burning off that fat and can lose 20, 30 pounds that they have put on from taking these hormones.
And there are other hormones that are involved in this. It's a complex of interrelated hormones. Pregnenolone, which is the grandparent of all these hormones, and dehydroepiandrosterone, and estrogen. Testosterone goes to estrogen. And then there are a whole series of intermediate hormones associated in this complex, which go down dramatically, linearly with progressive age. For example, with DHEA, if you're in your 80s, you're only making 15% of what you make in your 20s.
What they're finding is that the adrenal is divided into 3 zones, and one of those zones is responsible for DHEA synthesis and secretion. And that particular zone seems to shrink in size as people get older. So as that zone, if that's true, then as that zone goes away, it stops making DHEA and the DHEA levels decline.
All these steroid hormones, be it estrogen or testosterone, DHEA, even progesterone, should be measured through saliva testing before any hormones are prescribed, because if they are given when they are not needed or inappropriate doses, it can wreak havoc with a woman's health. So, on the other hand, progesterone is available. A doctor needs to write a prescription, and a compounding pharmacist can make these natural hormones available. And there are also products available in health food stores that have the proper amount of natural progesterone, and by proper amount what I mean is the physiologic dose that a woman should be making each day.
And hormone replacement is for life. If your thyroid fails, you take thyroid hormone and you keep taking it as long as you're still walking. The same thing is true of estrogen replacement. I think people have to think that estrogen replacement is as long as you can take it. And if you start at 50, you shouldn't stop at 60. You're just going to lose all the benefits by the time you're 70.
There are many things happening in our culture that are actually altering our hormone production. And one of the more serious problems is the exposure in our environment to the pesticides and to the herbicides and to the fungicides that are sprayed on all the fruits and vegetables we get in the supermarket. You know, lettuce can be sprayed up to 11 times with pesticides. And these pesticides are known to be estrogen mimics. So when we ingest them, these chemicals actually become the exact molecular match as estrogen we make, leading to high estrogen levels. The hormones in meat that we eat actually are ingested, and they are adding to this estrogen excess burden in Western women, which is why Western women are showing up with really, really high estrogen levels.
So we think that there is promise for hormone replacement therapy in both men and women for alleviating some of the effects of the aging process. The caution here is that when you give hormones, you're really not getting at the basic underlying process. What you're doing is working at about 3 steps down the aging cascade. The underlying process is due to damage to cells, oxidative damage from oxygen-free radicals and chemicals, and maybe from what's called glycation, that is glucose molecules sticking to vital cell components. And this then leads to disarray and disorganization of life processes and results, among other things, in decreases in hormones. Well, we can put the hormones back, and if we do it judiciously, I think we'll see some improvement, because some of the things that occur with aging, change in body fat and so on, are probably due to the hormone changes. But we're not getting at the underlying process when we put back hormones. If we really want to extend human lifespan, we have to deal with those damaging processes at step 1. The fact is that everyone would like to live forever, and it's always been possible to go to your local water fountain, bottle up water from the fountain of youth, and sell it to people, and gullible people will buy it. And the fountain of youth water this year is growth hormone, and people are buying it. But that doesn't mean that it's going to keep you from aging. And there's still an awful lot of hucksterism. There are snake oil salesmen out there, and you've got to protect yourself. The other problem is we don't know whether growth hormone is going to increase the risk of cancer. And it may, because it generates IGF-1 in your body in various cells and also in your blood. And IGF-1 is a powerful stimulus for cell division, and it is still controversial, but there is some evidence that people with high IGF-1 levels are at higher risk for certain cancers, notably prostate and breast. So taking growth hormone is, like any other active substance, a two-edged sword. It has potential for benefit, it has potential for harm, and until we understand better how those two potentials relate to each other, my advice is for people to be very cautious. What we really want to do is give not growth hormone itself, but an agent which will cause your pituitary to secrete more of its own growth hormone, and there are such agents. They're called secretagogues, and they're out there and they're being tested, that will get a better risk-benefit ratio from those because of the natural physiological pattern of growth hormone secretion that you get with those, which you can't get by injecting growth hormone.
Prove that you can slow down and reverse many of the markers of aging and certainly improve the quality of life. Dr. Martin Feldman, board certified in neurology, magna cum laude, Yale Medical School, Columbia Physicians and Surgeons, Mount Sinai, assistant professor of neurology, author of over 60 published papers in the peer-reviewed journal. I asked him, would he be the medical monitor on our health study group? Dr. Feldman, what did you find about the study?
I found significant changes throughout the spectrum of age. Persons even in their 80s did very well, or in their 30s did very well, plus men and women did equally well. And the data shows that there were very significant changes in two areas. One would be the objective aspect, which would be blood pressure, weight, total cholesterol, or the LDL, the bad cholesterol, versus HDL, the good cholesterol. And there were major statistical changes in all these areas. In addition to these very objective measures, we had subjective measures, which nevertheless to the people who had these improvements were very important to them, and this had to be proven via biostatistics. We had journals and many other biological markers in terms of the person's subjective energies, digestion, hair, skin, many aspects of their endurance, many aspects of how they felt and how they functioned in the real world. Studies showed that these things were biologically very statistically significant and was proven scientifically.
So no one had done an integrative study where you change everything in a person's life. Therefore, you can't have one marker against one objective. You know, it doesn't work that way. People are changing everything from stress to nutrients, from juicing to the kind of water, from exercising to how they were perceiving themselves. The idea was, what results do we have? And we had statistically significant results. Cholesterol came down, triglycerides came down, blood pressure came down, weight came down without calorie counting or dieting, but then subjective, less sleep, better energy, hair changed, wrinkles changed, fingernails, toenails changed, and people had other conditions. On the last night of the meeting, we had people, almost 700 in the final meeting. I asked how many people in here had arthritis when you started. All these hands went up. How many have it now? Hands went down. How many people who were, let's say, suffering from depression under psychiatric supervision and taking medications? Over 100 hands. 87% of them went down off the medication. Their doctors took them off. Now, mind you, I didn't know that anyone had any conditions because we weren't measuring those conditions. But arthritis, diabetes, fibrocystic breast disease that women had had. 5 women overcame fibrocystic breast disease they had had their whole life. People say, what's anecdotal? It's not just anecdotal because those are real people who are in a real study, and if you had had fibrocystic breast for 40 years and in 2 years you no longer had them, then what are you going to attribute it to? Chance? No. Spontaneous remission? No. It was the protocol. It was the program. And that's what we found. Hundreds of responses that were extremely positive.
I had over 90% blockage, carotid artery, and as you know, my family are physicians, my daughter and son-in-law, and they recommended I do a endarterectomy, and my wife and I talked it over and we decided not to. And since that time, since I did the reversing the aging process, I followed the protocol. I juiced, I exercised, I did colonics and put magnets on, did,
What happened?
what happened? The blockage went from over 90% to 50 to 70%, and I'm in pretty good health.
You also won the Outstanding Athlete in your age group this year,
Yes,
winning over 30 championship races.
that's correct.
I'd say that's a pretty good improvement.
Yes.
And your wife, Dolly, came in third in overall in her age group in championship races.
Yes.
And you're 70?
77.
77. So you see?
I'm in great shape, and we, my wife and I, go out dancing, and we associate with a lot of young people, and we keep young.
And you don't need Viagra.
Nope.
Okay? That's it. Thank you.
I'm going to keep on my protocol of vitamins and detoxification. And I'm here to prove that it does work. Look at my hair.
It's wonderful. It's beautiful.
And
And it's very rich, black, thick hair.
yes, yes, yes. And I had arthritis. This hand I couldn't move. Literally, I couldn't move, and this shoulder. Look. I was always a dancer, too. I couldn't move my legs. I really couldn't move my legs.
My wife and I, we became part of the anti-aging group in January, and we started the juicing and changing our diet and lifestyle. And then my hair began to grow back here in the front, and I had a change in energy level, attitude change, and just all around felt very, very good about what was happening to me, which had encouraged me.
Good. Again, maybe we can get a close-up of this gentleman's hair because it's really filling in very nicely there, and it's filling in with dark hairs.
Right.
So you had male pattern baldness. You were going bald.
Yes.
How old are you?
64.
Oh, he doesn't look 64, does it?
I'll be 65 in December.
Oh, good for you. Well, now here's an example. Show me 64-year-old males going bald with male pattern baldness who get their hair back without using drugs. Well, good. Congratulations.
I thought of myself as an old person. And I just, since I went on the protocol, I think within 3 weeks I stopped having aches and pains. I had had them at night when I slept. I'd wake up and my legs would hurt. That's gone. So, and I'm just more limber, and I'm standing straight again, and it's just great. And then I had some other things that I hadn't thought about, but the hair and the skin. My skin looks better, and it's less wrinkled. My memory's gotten better. I just find that you don't even notice when you have your memory is fine, so I almost take it for granted now. But there were times before I started the protocol, I would forget words and forget things I had done the week before. And I think one of the best things that's happened to me is I was living with a lot of fear of disease. And I have, listening to all the people who've done your protocol, I just have so much confidence that I'm going to stay well, that's helped my whole feeling of well-being.
What we enjoyed in our youth, we can recreate today. I know a lot of people won't do a lot of things because, quite frankly, they think, I'm not healthy enough to do them. Well, how many times in life do you accommodate to match your level of health? So if you're not feeling physically well, if your body doesn't look the way you want it to look, are you going to go do the things you'd otherwise do if your body looked and felt great? No. You compensate down. You compromise down. We're a whole nation of adaptive people. We adapt down. But adaptation down is not helping us get over disease and live a longer life. And that's what exercise will help you do. Systematic routine. Now, of course, you should, after the age of 40, have a proper physical examination to make sure that your body can tolerate exercise, that you have no hidden heart disease or high blood pressure that could throw you into a crisis even by doing something lightly. But once that's done, a regular systematic program can change your body tremendously. Just think what an exercise program does. Stimulates endorphins, you think better, you feel better. It helps cleanse out the body, it speeds up detoxification. You burn more calories, it changes your metabolic set point, so you're going to lose weight and keep it off. It stimulates circulation so that your body actually is better nourished because more blood is getting to more areas of the body and helping deliver the nutrients to those cells that otherwise it wouldn't be getting. all that from just your exercise. But if our beliefs haven't got us to exercise, and a lot of older women don't exercise because they were not conditioned to. Again, go back to the belief system. If you weren't told as a woman to exercise earlier in life, there's a high probability you will not exercise later in life.
Later in life, we begin to lose muscle mass, either through the lack of exercise or through the inability to replace muscle that's lost normally as a result of exercise. And so we need to understand how we keep our muscles functioning, because without muscle function, we just can't do anything anymore.
By keeping activity up, and especially vigorous activity, the rate of loss of muscle will decrease. And so a lot of the things that happen in old age, the decrease in vigor, decrease in muscle strength, can be slowed down, if not entirely prevented, by remaining active throughout life.
There seems to be a real law in the body of using it or losing it, whether that's mentally or physically. They've shown actually that exercise increases cognition in older people. I think there's a lot of indications that we have feedback mechanisms, that our muscles get stronger as we use them, that our bones develop mineral deposits as we use them, that our brains actually develop increased connections and as we use them. There's good indication that both exercise and stimulation do that, as well as exercise. Exercise, in fact, has been found to turn on brain-derived growth factor, just the way estrogen does.
When we exercise, and we eat right, and we juice, then we got to de-stress. And de-stress is not just doing some yoga or meditation or reading some positive affirmations in the middle of the morning and then going to work and getting stressed out an hour later. We're talking about understanding what causes stress and inappropriate responses and changing how we view stress and making better choices so we don't allow ourselves to be affected by other people's anger, negativity, or any of the projections that would otherwise cause us to feel bad. Think of how many people in life believe firmly in something that clearly is wrong. And you're not a part of that belief system, so you can see what's wrong. And it's only when you stand outside of a belief system can you properly understand its impact, constructive and destructive. But we're not told we have a choice. We're told that everything we're supposed to believe in is in the circle of the known. This is the circle of the known. Inside here, every question I have must be answered by an authority figure. Anything I want will be given to me providing that I am obedient to the larger social or familial or educational or political or religious virtue that everyone else lives by. So one day you find out the people in that belief system over there, well, they have a better way of living with this, that, or the other. So you go out to another belief system and you're warned, that's all nonsense, quackery, charlatanism. And you say, well, hold on a second, let me think this through. You told me for years that that group of little old ladies that were wearing tennis shoes and eating a vegetarian diet and exercising and colon cleansing, you said they were health nuts. Well, they happen to have been right, and science proves it, and all the people who condemn them are sitting around now with colorectal cancer or constipation or diverticulitis and defective and deformed feet and heart disease. Why can't you understand that you prejudice these people? You didn't want to know what they were about. You simply knew that they were a threat to you. What do you dislike so much about yourself that you're projecting upon someone else? And that's what we did. If I went to a party and I wanted a glass of mineral water, they always put a twist of lime in it, a little stir. And I ask why? Well, because people make sure that they think you have gin or vodka. Why? I don't want gin or vodka. I don't even want people to think I would drink gin or vodka. But it'd make them feel bad. And that's the mindset. That was how we thought. And women weren't allowed to run marathons because you were told that you were not physiologically capable of it. So you're banned from marathons. So you know what's interesting? How many people will believe you when you say you've done something versus them say you can't do it? And then we get into, but I changed. They'll say, no, you didn't. But I was bald. No, you weren't. But I was 280 pounds and couldn't lose weight. No, you weren't. And then people would rather deny the reality of your experience and go to their desk with their orthodoxy than to challenge it. That is how powerful a belief system is. And that's why I put so much energy and attention into the value of changing the aging process by challenging the belief process. Not to believe in yourself, not to follow your own dream, not to honor your inner vision and your inner wisdom, is to believe that someone else's dream is more important than your own. Someone else's life should be honored, but not your own. Look at all the baby boomers. Baby boomers, you've worked too hard, you've been overly responsible, you've done it all. More education, more career advancement than our fathers did. You have more than anyone in history for a group. But do you have happiness? Do you have contentment? Do you feel that you have enough to be enough, to let the rest go? Can you detoxify your life? Can you unclutter your life? Can you slow down your life to the speed of life? Most can't. And those that can have learned an important lesson. So that was the final component of what we did with our protocol. So you see, it's not just about the amount of a nutrient or the servings of vegetables or the exercise. It was about all of it put together. And when people put it all together, oh, did they change.
I think the whole idea of what it is to be old and how much you can do when you're old has been shifting in a positive way. I mean, I can remember people just sort of giving out when they were about 50 years old. People at 50 nowadays are frequently just starting a second career. And that's a big change.
It's always a little bit of an argument about whether it's good for society to extend the average lifespan of a population by 20 years. This would have very intense social and economic impact. Although we'd like to be able to do it, what we'd really like to do is to extend the health span of individuals while they're alive.
It's really hard to say if there's going to be any major increases in human lifespan in the next 50 years. I think there's going to be major increases in health span. I think you're going to see more and more people living into their 90s and probably more centenarians living to 100 or past, and I think they will be healthier, more active, independent. So I think that's what the goal of the NIA is to promote that. Whether we're going to, I doubt that in the next 100 years we will have 200-year-old men. But I think we'll have very healthy, very active people who are glad they're living to be 100 rather than, spending the last 20 years not with a very low quality of life. So I think that's what most of our research is aimed at, improving the quality of life.
There was a great African-American baseball player. His name was Satchel Paige. And he was playing a lot longer than anyone believed a person should play based upon their age. He was about 60 and still throwing the fastball. He was a great athlete. So someone asked him once, says, Satchel Paige, how old are you? And he said, how old would I be if you didn't know how old I was? Well, I believe that from this day forward, when someone asks you your age, don't answer them, because you don't know what your age is. You're two ages. You're a chronological age and you're a biological age. The more you do at the biological level, the less significant becomes your chronological age. Until one day you wake up and you may be 50, but you may be 25 at the biological level, and that's going to determine the length and quality of your life. It's in your hands. Thank you very much for watching.